Welcome to PowerBlock, where today we show you how to go from 8 to 16 miles per gallon, how to build more big block power with nitrous, what to expect when you cram a V8 into a Ranger pickup, and how to rebuild a classic 4-speed gearbox. Plus, vintage tire king Corky Coker joins me with his classic pickup and rare Pierce Arrow motorcycle. Let's get started.
So, you'd like a little better fuel economy out of your daily driver weekend wheeler, while at the same time make it more capable off-road.
Well, who wouldn't?
Today on Xtreme, we'll show you how to get it done, from start to finish. It's our fuel-saving street truck.
Welcome to Xtreme 4x4 and the final installment on our fuel-saving street truck. Now we know what it's like. It's hard to have a tow rig, trailer, and a dedicated wheeling rig. It's a lot of investment in time and, more importantly, a large investment of money. So that's why we started this project. We wanted a truck that you could drive every day back and forth to work, and yet still take it out on the weekend and do some light wheeling. But more importantly, during that week-long driving period, we wanted to get you as much fuel economy as we could, because that's the money savings that everyone is chasing these days. Now, based on the emails that you guys have sent us, a lot of you guys out there are driving this exact same truck, 1500 series Dodge, V8 underneath the hood, solid axles front and rear. They're honestly a great truck for a daily driver and a weekend wheeler. The problem is, out of the box, when you throw a lift kit on it and some wheels and tires, fuel economy numbers are not that great. When we first started this project, this truck was only pulling down between 8 and 10 miles per gallon, but we were able to get it a lot higher. Now, the first little trick we're going to try to save a little bit of money on fuel is under the hood. Now, the V8 in this truck is just like most domestic pickups in the fact that it has a mechanical clutch fan at the front of the motor to keep the engine cool. That fan is driven by the engine as it turns, and it draws air across the radiator. Now, the plan here is simple. We're going to remove the mechanical fan and therefore remove that load from the engine. To keep the radiator cool, we'll install an electric fan. That way, we'll be using power from the battery to keep our truck cool instead of power from the motor. By saving that power in the motor, hopefully that'll get us a little better gas mileage. So by removing that mechanical load from the engine, we were able to get about 3 extra miles per tank full. Now, it might not sound like a lot, but every little bit helped in this adventure to get better fuel economy. Now, for those of you guys wondering, that fan was a simple 16-inch fan that we picked up from Summit Racing. Next, we put the Dodge on a diet. We'll start with everything on the inside. Man, whoever owns this truck is a slob. Actually, it's my truck. I'm a slob. $79 of junk. So our truck just lost 342 pounds. Now all we have to do is run a few more tanks of fuel through it and come up with a new fuel mileage number. So shedding all that weight saved us how much at the pump? Well, almost a ½ mile per gallon. Now, not a lot, but when you couple it together with the 1.5 miles we picked up with the electric fan, for less than $100, we now had this truck into the double digits at 10 miles per gallon. Now, the next upgrade not only saved us a bunch of money on fuel, but more importantly, it made this truck perform better in the dirt. Now these are Dana 60s from a 1998 Dodge 3/4 ton. Now the nice thing about these is they're a lot stronger than the stock axles that come in the 1500. But more importantly, the gear ratio in them is different. Now that's going to compensate for the larger wheels and tires that are on the truck. Now that's a serious investment. It's about $1,000 but at the same time it's going to make the truck stronger and it's going to make it a little bit better on fuel because of that gear ratio difference. Now we are going to have to change out the wheels and tires because the Dana 60s have an 8-lug. So we need to put an 8-lug wheel and tire on there. And we're going to take advantage of needing to do that because that is where we're going to save the majority of our gas mileage. Now, by no means are we telling you guys, do you want to save a little bit of money on gas? Run out, buy new wheels and tires. That's kind of like stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. What we are saying is that when it's time to buy some tires, whether yours are worn out like this truck here, or you're going to change them because you're changing the axles like we are as well, be honest with yourself. Don't buy the most aggressive off-road tire because you think it looks cool. Get a good middle-of-the-road tire, like this Mickey Thompson Baja MTZ. Now, the nice thing about this tire is the tread pattern is pretty close-knit. Now, that means it's going to have a very low rolling resistance when you're driving it on the highway. That'll save you a little bit of gas because it's not as much power to turn the tire with the truck. Now, since we had to swap the rims out as well, we had them go ahead and install these tires on a set of their new 17x9 side-biter aluminum wheel in that 8-lug pattern to match our new Dana 60 axles. Now all we have to do is pull the half-ton axles out, bolt up the new 3/4 ton units. No custom fab needed because they're out of the same model truck. Once we get the new tires and wheels on there, we'll run a couple of tanks worth of fuel through this truck. Let you know what kind of fuel economy numbers we get. We're shooting for low 13s.
Next, vacuum gauge, unit bearing, and cable shifter upgrades. Then later, we'll hit the trail. Stay tuned.
There's a better way to stop. Here's this week's PowerBlock Tech Tip.
Dimpled and slotted rotors outperform stock cast iron rotors, especially if you're trying to stop a truck or a muscle car. Their surface ground to be exactly parallel. They're lighter, coated, and they cool faster. Under hard driving, rotors can get red hot, causing pads to emit thermal gases and deposits. Sport rotors also have radial slots to clear out gases and residues, improving stopping power. If you need to replace your rotors, these are definitely the way to go.
Now, if there's one universal truth, it's that we all love to save money. You guys have told us that you really like the fact that we're taking this 96 Dodge lifted street truck and trying to do two things. We're trying to make it a more capable off-roader, but we're also trying to keep more money in our pocket by improving its fuel economy by doing little things to it and giving you real-world feedback. Now, so far, we removed the mechanical fan, replaced it with an electric fan, and that took us from a baseline of around 8.5 miles per gallon to just over 9. Then we put the truck on a diet. We cleaned out the interior, ditched the full-size spare and a bunch of junk in the bed, and that got us up to about 9.5 or 10 miles per gallon. But the big change came when we swapped the axles. By ditching the stock half-ton axles and replacing them with two Dana 60 units that we pulled from the same make and model of truck, just a little bit newer, we accomplished a couple of things. Number one, we're more confident in this truck's ability to go off-road because of the larger axle shaft diameter as well as ring gear size in that Dana 60 axle, especially in the front end. But more importantly, we now have better fuel economy. You see, the half-ton axles with the oversized wheels and tires, when you drove this truck on the highway, it was somewhat confused. It was always dropping in and out of overdrive. The converter would lock up and unlock, and when you're cruising at highway speeds, the engine was usually turning around 2,500 RPM. Well, with our new axles, we have a 4:10-to-1 gear ratio, and what that does is it basically fools the truck. It honestly thinks it's still riding on stock size wheels and tires. That means that the overdrive drops in at the correct time and the converter locks up. We can cruise down the highway all day long, turning around 1,500 RPM. Well, what does that mean? It means that we are now running at 12 miles per gallon with this truck simply from changing the axles. Now, we could have obtained the same thing by just upgrading the ring gear in our stock axles, but then we wouldn't have that ability to take this truck off-road because those half-ton axles would not handle these new tires and wheels when you throw them into the dirt. Now, today's upgrade is actually pretty simple and it applies to every car out there. We're going to change how you drive your vehicle, and we're going to give you a gauge to measure your improvement. What we're going to be monitoring is our engine vacuum. Now, when the piston travels down inside the cylinder and the throttle is closed or your engine's idling, it's basically pulling air past the throttle blades through a huge restriction. It's just like putting your hand over the end of a vacuum. Now that creates a large negative pressure in here, pulls about 20 inches of vacuum. That's fine, the engine's idling, and that's how it's designed to work. You open your throttle blades up just a little bit, maybe 10-15% throttle, your engine's still going to accelerate, the truck's going to move down the road, it's just going to do it a little bit slower because there's not a lot of load on the engine. If you go ahead and open that throttle all the way up, you lose all the negative pressure in this area and your vacuum gauge is going to go to zero. What that means is you have a lot of load on your engine. You're putting a lot of fuel and a lot of air into it. Obviously, you're accelerating faster. If you install a vacuum gauge in your truck and just monitor it, it'll tell you exactly how far you have the throttle valve opened anytime you're driving it. If you keep the numbers up on your vacuum gauge, you're going to keep money in your pocket. For our truck, we're going to install an Aluminator Phantom Series vacuum gauge. And to simplify the mounting process, we're going to use one of Aluminator's pods. It's specifically designed to mount the gauge on top of the steering column, keeping it in plain view. Then, we just tap into a vacuum source on the engine. So our homemade driving coach as a vacuum gauge did exactly what we thought. By keeping an eye on how we drove the truck, we picked up an extra single mile per gallon. So if you're keeping track at home with the fan, putting the truck on a diet, swapping in the axles, and installing the vacuum gauge to change how we drive, we're now at 14 miles per gallon. Now our next job not only saved us money at the pump, but it's going to save us in the future on our repair bill. Today on our fuel-saving street truck, we're going to be doing what's called a unit bearing elimination. And what that does is it removes this solid bearing that the tire bolts to. Because on these modern solid axle four-wheel drive trucks, whether you're in four-wheel drive or two-wheel drive, driving down the road, you are always turning the shafts and all the differential components. That means more drag and less fuel efficiency. So we're going to be changing that out with a Spin Tech kit. And what that does is it converts the axle back over to the roller style bearings with the freewheeling hubs. We'll be able to unlock the tire and then it will just be the tire turning, no axle components, get better fuel mileage. FinTech Industries makes these kits for either Fords or Dodges, any truck with a solid axle front. And it's no harder to install than changing the brake rotor. Now this setup is actually going to save us money a couple different ways. Every day when we drive it, by eliminating the drive line from the tire and wheels, it's going to save us money at the pump. But more importantly, the unit bearing that we removed is very expensive. On this Dodge, this non-serviceable unit costs almost $300. And you guys know that are running the oversized wheels and tires like we are here, you go through those bearings about once every 8 to 12 months. The nice thing about the double roller bearings in this setup, once a year, simply take it apart, repack them, and they should be good for the life of the truck. All I have to do now is swap out the other side, and then we'll take the truck out, run a couple tanks of fuel through it, let you know what we find. Now what we found was the unit bearing elimination was just the icing on the cake that we needed for this truck. We picked up almost 2.5 miles per gallon to put our final number right at around 16.5 miles per gallon, which is amazing for a truck that's over 14 years old. Now what we're going to do is pull this rig into the shop and show you how to deal with a two-piece axle shaft. Welcome back to Xtreme, and today we're not just going to focus on the fuel savings we've gotten with this truck, we're also going to work on a couple things to make it work better off-road. When manufacturers first brought these solid axle pickup trucks back onto the market in the early 90s, they had a small problem. As we showed you guys before, they completely removed the freewheeling hubs. That meant that this axle was live all the time, and that hit you in the pocket when it comes to the fuel economy. Now to solve that problem, they came up with a rather unique system. They installed what's called an axle disconnect. This is a small shift fork that's mounted in the long side axle tube that basically disconnects one wheel and tire from the center section of the differential. Now that got your fuel economy numbers back up because when you're driving, you are only turning one tire inside that differential, took the load off of the engine. Now the downfall to that was how it was activated. It was activated by engine vacuum. Two small vacuum lines came down to a vacuum pod. Now that vacuum source traveled through the transfer case. When you shifted the transfer case into four-wheel drive, the vacuum came down here and engaged the two axles together with a little shift collar. Now the problem with using vacuum to supply that source is engine vacuum, it changes all the time, whether you're on the throttle or off. Now that means when you need this axle the most, climbing that big tall hill, wide open throttle, you have a chance of losing vacuum down to this axle disconnect, and therefore you'll lose your four-wheel drive in the front axle. But there is a way to solve that problem. So we're going to ditch that vacuum setup and replace it with a 100% mechanical connection with a kit that we got from PowerBlock. Now we'll replace that small housing that mounts to the front axle, and instead of a small vacuum pod, we'll hook up this heavy-duty Morse-style cable and run it inside the passenger compartment of the truck. That way, whenever we want that front axle locked together, all we have to do is pull out on the cable, and we know we have true 100% four-wheel drive. When we're ready to go back into two-wheel drive, we'll just push it in, and then we'll disconnect that front axle, giving us that two-piece axle shaft assembly. And it's easy to install, just bolts right in place. The first step of the install is to remove the factory axle coupler and clean the gasket surface. The new PowerBlock system bolts right up to the axle, and then the cable is routed into the cab. Now whenever you want to engage the front axle, all you got to do is pull the cable to lock the two-piece shaft together. Now every other project we've done to this truck, we've told you that we'll run a couple tanks of fuel through it and let you know what kind of fuel economy numbers we come back with. But this last little job we've done here has nothing to do with our fuel mileage. The only reason we installed that PowerBlock into this rig was to improve its ability off-road. And there's only one way to test that. We're going four-wheeling.
And now, more Xtreme 4x4.
Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4. Now, we've already proven that this truck saves us money when we're driving it on the street. Now it's time to see how it handles a couple of trails. That's not baseball cards on my spokes. I gotta grease that U-joint. Next time. Next time. When you're wheeling a truck like this with an open front diff, you really gotta choose where you're gonna go because traction on the front end is somewhat limited. I don't know if I'm gonna get up this hill. Oh, yeah. Uh-oh, oh, there's a tree there. Be smart when you're on the trail with your daily driver. If it looks like it's gonna tear it up, sometimes it's best just to back on down. So there you have it, guys. Our fuel-saving street truck has done everything we've asked it to do. It's great to drive every day, getting fuel economy in the high teens, and best of all, you can still take it out on the weekend and conquer some trails.
Here's an all-new episode of Horsepower.
Horsepower's been big on small blocks recently. From the new GM E-Rod engine to the Ford 5-liter Coyote. Some small blocks even got power adders like this Mustang GT that we supercharged. Now that's all cool stuff, but kind of leads us to believe it's time for some all-out big block horsepower. And that's what this show is all about, and that's why we got this 572 out of the mothballs to have a little fun today. Now this is an engine that has quite a history on horsepower. Back around 2002, just after its release, we went to a GM plant to see 572s assembled by hand with pretty strict attention to detail. We saw them lower the 4340 forged steel crank into that tall deck bow tie block and stab in the solid roller camshaft with its 714-inch lift. The GM guys were excited about the new aluminum heads with 118cc combustion chambers, 315cc intake runners, stiff dual valve springs, and 1.7 roller rockers. Complemented, of course, with a single plane tall deck intake manifold. Yeah, it was big news then for a big reason. Just add a starter, fire it up, and make killer crate engine horsepower. Back home a little later, we brought in all the 572's parts, along with pro stock racing legend Warren Johnson. Quite a hands-on experience.
Torque it on one more time.
As was dropping the same engine into Horsepower's 69 Project Supernova with a huge performance racing trans behind it. A few years later, after our DTS engine dyno was installed, we broke it in style with a second 572, which made an impressive 740 horsepower and 725 foot-pounds of torque. Today, our goal is to bring that 572 to the next performance level. We'll try out two different Holley Ultra Dominator race carbs. When we determine which one makes the most power with our combination, time for the squeeze play. That's right, a healthy dose of nitrous.
A while back, we sent these heads up to Livernois Motorsports in Michigan where they underwent some surgery. Now, to improve flow even more, they poured in and polished the intake and exhaust ports, and when the heads got back to us, we upgraded the valve train with a shaft-mounted rocker system, but we went ahead and kept the 1.7 ratio. We're going to see if those tweaks add up to any extra performance over in the dyno. But first, we need to add some components to the engine, like this MSD distributor. Now, instead of just installing it, we're going to show you how to properly set one up so you don't risk damaging the distributor or the camshaft gear. If you install it bottomed out, the heat expands the oil pump shaft and it could break the bolts off of the oil pump. Now, once the distributor is seated, go ahead and take a measurement from the base of it to the intake. Now raise it just a little bit, tighten down the collar, and take another measurement. You want to be between 10 and 30 thousandths. That'll give you plenty of clearance for heat expansion. Now we can check for proper gear mesh in between the cam and distributor gear. To do that, put some gear marking compound on the distributor gear and drop it back in the hole. Now turn the motor over several times and that'll wear a pattern in the grease. Your mark should be halfway down the tube. The MSD distributor comes with heavy springs for the Advance. Now we're going to swap them out for these light springs that will bring the Advance in a lot sooner in the RPM range. We're not going to lock it out to avoid hard starting conditions. The first carburetor we're going to try on our 572 is this Holley Ultra Dominator in 1150 CFM. Now this thing has fully adjustable external throttle linkage, dual inlet fuel bowls, and built-in sight windows for easier float adjustment. Now something else that's pretty cool is they hand polish the Venturi inlets for better airflow and less turbulence. Now something for you racers to consider, this carburetor is made out of all aluminum, so it's 3.8 pounds lighter than your standard Dominator. With the initial timing set and the warm-up complete, let's see what we get. Man, this is unbelievable. 781 horsepower, single 1150 Dominator. And torque is 640 foot-pounds through the entire range. Let's go ahead and put a degree or two of time in it and see if it pulls it anymore. Man, 789 horsepower at 6,500 RPM, 694 foot-pounds of torque at 5,300. Looks like that head work up at Livernois really paid off. Now when we come back from the break, we're going to shove another Dominator on here with another 100 CFM and see what kind of power we get out of it. Who knows, this thing might even end up breaking 1,000 on the nitrous.
And now, back to the horsepower shop.
We're back and moving on. We're playing with our 572 with heads that were highly modified at Livernois. We ran it with an 1150 CFM Ultra Dominator and made 789 horsepower, 694 foot-pounds of torque. Now you're just in time to see what another 100 CFM will give us. By the way, we're feeding this 572 with 110 octane race fuel, and a lot of it. It's burning about 2.5 gallons a run. Whoa, 791 with 699 foot-pounds. Time to play with some nitrous. The Ultra 1250 was the right thing to do, and the gains proved it. Plus, it'll benefit the nitrous we're fixing to throw at it. Now, this is a cheater kit from NOS that's adjustable from a 150 to a 250 shot. Guess which two we're gonna try. The first thing up is the spray bar. This is a wet system, which means both fuel and nitrous are sprayed downward into the engine through these spray bars. So make sure the plate is installed with the NOS logo facing up. What makes this easy is both fuel and nitrous use the same size jets for each shot. Here goes the 150s. Nitrous oxide allows the engine to burn more air and fuel. The results are a more powerful combustion. It's non-flammable, but delivers more oxygen than atmospheric air by breaking down at elevated temps. It's stored as a compressed liquid. As it evaporates and expands in the intake, it causes a large drop in intake charge temps. This makes a denser charge for more air and fuel to enter the cylinder. That's why it requires less timing. The amount of timing retard differs for every combo, but a safe practice to follow is 1.5 to 2 degrees retard for every 50 horsepower. All right, we're ready to make a pull on a 150 shot. Now, normally the throttle arm activates the nitrous system, but because we're on the dyno, I'm gonna do it with this switch. See if you can tell when I hit it. Look at that, 970 horsepower, 914 foot-pounds of torque at 3,500. Man, to be honest, that's a little more than I expected out of the 150 shot. I'm a little nervous to see what the 250 shot's gonna do. Here's my concern. I know the Scat forged crank can handle about 1,200 horsepower. Now this motor also uses a Manley forged shot peen rod that'll handle about the same. What we're not sure about is the actual rod bolt that's used in the rod. Now rod bolts come in different strengths depending on the reciprocating mass, how many RPM you're gonna turn it, and what power level you're gonna be at. Now before we go any further with nitrous, we wanna make sure we know so we don't have a catastrophic failure with the engine. The only way to find that out is to tear it apart. This bolt's stamped both on the top and bottom with an ARP logo telling us it's an 8740 bolt. Now that's good to about 850, 900 horsepower. What we wanted to see was ARP 2000 on the head, which would let us know that that bolt's good to about 1200. So keep that in mind when you start throwing a bunch of nitrous to an engine. Make sure it can handle it. Now what we're gonna do is pull the rods out of this thing and take it to a local machine shop. We'll show the new bolts go in and the rods being resized. Then in a few weeks, we'll come back, show the motor go together, and make a couple pulls on the 250 shot. Watch for that on a future episode of Horsepower.
Well, you guys all recognize this guy, Corky Coker from Coker Tire. Welcome back to PowerBlock.
Well, Courtney, it's great to be with you, and it's always great to be with my favorite hostess on my favorite show.
Thank you, Corky. It's a pleasure to have you. Now, you brought some serious goodies this time.
Actually, Courtney, this is my daily driver. 1953 F-100 flathead T5, and it's got 16-inch steelies with Coker Classic radial tires, but they look like bi-splies.
Nice. You drive this every day. I love it.
Every day, back and forth.
Now, if someone has a classic car, but they want a modern tire's performance, but keeping that period correct look, can you help them out?
Let me tell you, Court, Coker Tire Company can cover all those needs. We have 250,000 square feet of collector tires and wheels, and we ship out 2 tractor trailers of vintage tires, trucks, you know, motorcycle tires every day.
Jeez, you've got everything covered.
We got it covered.
The weekend car cruise, a tradition as old as the hot rod itself. Ever since people started modifying the performance and looks of their classic rides, well, they wanted to show them off. One of the favorite American cruise events happens every month from April through October in Somerset, Kentucky. Summer Nights started small in the year 2000 and now attracts car guys and gals from several states. The monthly Somerset cruise kicks off with a Friday night block party where some of the expected 1,000 cars come here, driving in no trailer queens.
Oh yeah, I mean that is the fun of being a car guy. Get out and have fun and drive them till the wheels fall off.
There's no fee to show your car, and of course,
I like the blue one.
no trophies or competition. You'll see just about anything imaginable, from the classics like this 58 Chevy convertible to rat rods. Hey, we even found a corral full of Mavericks, only 25,000 built. This is a place where you can find rare rides, like this immaculate 55 Dodge Lancer, now worth a fortune, next to a Herbie Bug the owner purchased for, believe it or not,
$75.
How much?
$75.
What?
Here's an Oklahoma car.
Like any cruise in, you won't have any trouble getting owners to tell you everything you want to know and more about their car.
California car, still got the original California carburetor on it.
You never know what cars or car people to expect. Ben Jones, who'll always be known as Cooter on the Dukes of Hazzard, came to sell some goodies and sign stuff for his fans. Of course, this is just the opening act of a weekend-long cruise-in where there's plenty of go involved along with the show.
All right, guys, I appreciate all of you coming this morning. We're going to have a
Early Saturday morning, Ron rallies the troops who want to take part in a fun run.
go.
It's a scenic 40-mile ride on some of the main roads and back roads outside Somerset. The countryside is gorgeous, all the way to the destination, an 8th-mile drag strip called Lake Cumberland Dragway. A lot of serious local racers joined in to show how it's done. It's the first time many of these cruise cars have been on a drag strip, but it's all about having fun, with the exception of a few grudge matches. Several late model stock muscle cars faced off. Camaro versus Challenger. And the Camaro is winning with an 803. Camaro versus Mustang. And the Mustang wins with a 751. Nothing decisive, of course, but one thing's for sure, we got to get back to town for the main event. The downtown show with a cast of more than 1,000 mostly cool cars. We'll see you there. Horsepower's back, cruising at the monthly Summer Night celebration in Kentucky. What makes this such a cool attraction? In a big way, it's the volunteers who park the cars in and around the historic town square and who help make the deal fun, like cruising should be. If Ford ponies are your passion, hey, you came at the perfect time. It's Mustang month, and almost a fourth of the 1,200 cars registered are Mustang Club members.
Who's your Mustang Club from Columbus, Indiana? I'm real excited to have our club representative. We've got 8 cars, about 14 people from our club.
A number of married couples brought 2 Mustangs. His is a newly restored fastback. Hers a drop-top Fox body.
Don't tell me how to drive my car.
Thank you.
Nice little car.
You.
I met another couple from Lexington, Kentucky who stay together despite distinctively different loyalties.
Equal time. He found a Camaro 68 and restored it, and we started going to some local shows, and I said, hey, I need a car. So this is my car.
This is your car.
We've done a lot to it.
You have any friendly arguments over who has the best one?
Of course, but I know which one's the best. It's the Mustang.
Well, beyond Mustang Alley, it's a mix of antiques, muscle cars, and more. Which begs the question, what will they allow in here?
There's some qualifications that you have to have. We don't just let any car come in, and we generally don't have any problem with that.
1, 2, 3.
Like I said before, there are no awards or trophies, but there are door prizes, and this 96 Vet would make a perfect project vehicle. Okay, time to cruise the cruise and see what we find.
Everybody else is driving cool cars. I got a golf car. What are you gonna do?
There it is, the original General Lee, one of several hundred. Corvette, 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 Corvette.
And a Mustang.
Look at what we found. We were dragging this.
Hey, Joe, that thing got a Hemi in it?
Gotta stop here. These guys are all about Mustang cop cars used for a limited time during the 80s.
All of these cars were stock 302 cars with stock drivetrain. It was the suspension that made them fast and the lightweight.
My personal favorite? Well, just maybe it's this Pro Street Monte Carlo, modified and personalized by its proud owner.
402 block, bore 60 over. It's a solid roller cam. It's got 100 shot of nitrous.
Is it done?
They're never done. My wife thinks it's done, though.
Do you remember that famous street race from American Graffiti? Yellow Coupe versus 55 Chevy? Well, apparently this father and son saw the movie too many times. No bones about it. They made replicas of each car.
We started out with this coupe, and then we ended up bringing Paul and City out to a car show, so we needed a 55, and Dad said, let's just do one for ourselves, and I said, no, I don't know about that, Pop.
We actually built a car in 8 weeks, the black 55, and from start to finish. Yes, sir.
Well, you still watch the movie?
Every chance we get.
Pretty much.
Well, obviously the couple that cruises together stays together. This pair of Mustang owners decided to renew their vows with hundreds of witnesses.
Now you better kiss each other.
Oh, ain't it sweet? Well, just like the weekend cruise tradition, carried on in towns like Somerset, Kentucky. Showing them off, driving them on the back roads, even racing them down the strip. It's an ongoing celebration of America's cool car culture. We'll see you next time.
More with Corky and his rare Pierce 4-cylinder motorcycle coming up. But right now, Trucks is up with the street payoff of Project Rolling Thunder.
Today, we're hitting the streets with Project Rolling Thunder, our 4.6-liter powered Ford Ranger-based compact pickup to see just how our new drivetrain motivates this mini Lightning. It's all today here on Trucks.
Hey guys, welcome to Trucks. Well, today is kind of a special episode for me. This marks my 100th episode of Trucks TV. So it's only fitting we're working on an awesome project. This is Rolling Thunder, our V8 converted compact truck. It's a Mazda B2500, or started out that way, but we're calling it a Ranger too, since essentially it's the same vehicle. And obviously, there's been a ton of work done so far. So we're gonna give you a little recap and catch you up on what's been done. After yanking the original 4-cylinder, the Marauder 4.6 and transmission went in without a whole lot of trouble. We rearranged some stuff under the hood, built a new exhaust system, and boy, it sounded great. Now, here's a couple of the things that you haven't seen us do. We actually bought a V8 Explorer radiator, but the core size was identical to the original 4-cylinder radiator, so we sent it back, saved some money, and we're repurposing this one. Now, obviously, we've lost the mechanical fan from the 4-cylinder with the 4.6, so we went to Summit Racing and purchased this 17-inch puller that should be pretty good and pretty efficient. On the radiator hoses, again, we went to the parts store and pieced some stuff together that is going to complete the cooling cycle. The upper hose is a stock one, so again, we save money there. And we're kind of betting that between the efficiency of the cooling fan, all the space we've got between the fan and the engine, as well as, believe it or not, there's still some pretty good room underneath the hood, despite this being a compact truck. So all told, this should be pretty efficient in the cooling department.
Now, based on the discoloration of the stainless steel exhaust tubing and catalytic converters, it's pretty apparent we've been running our 4.6 in the shop quite a bit. Now, before we run it anymore, and certainly before we drop the body back down on this thing, we got to do something to isolate the heat that the exhaust tubing and cats make from any non-metal object, like the wiring harness, sensors and switches on the transmission, as well as the transmission shifter cable. Now, catalytic converters can operate in a heat range of 1,200 to 1,600 degrees. That's why the OEMs take so much care to insulate the areas around them. And with ours sitting right next to the transmission and the transmission cooler lines, well, we don't want to heat up the transmission fluid any more than we have to. So to get that done, we're going to use a combination of simple aluminum heat shields and some exhaust heat insulation products. Now, installing the exhaust wrap is pretty straightforward, but you are going to need some stainless steel zip ties or retaining straps to hold it in place. Now, to hold the heat shields in place, just using a couple of self-tapping screws. Now, the thermal protective wrap we put over the exhaust tubing and secured with stainless steel zip ties came from Taylor. And they also make this thermal protective sleeve that's good for up to 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're going to put a section of this over top of our plastic-coated B&M shift cable. The last thing we need is that outer plastic layer melting. Now, we know our shifter cable was built to withstand some heat, but our 4.6 is going to make plenty of it. So we're installing this just to be on the safe side. All right, with our heat issue resolved, we can move on to one of the last pieces of our little stage 1 puzzle here, and that's getting the automatic transmission operational. And when this engine and transmission combo sat down in between the frame rails of the 03 Marauder that it came out of, well, they were both electronically controlled by the same computer, the PCM, or Powertrain Control Module. And since we've got our dual overhead cam 4.6 running on a standalone engine management system, we need to do something similar for the transmission as well, since it's also electronically controlled. So we picked up a standalone harness and a standalone computer for it as well. Now, the wiring harness plugs directly into a few key sensors on the side of the transmission. Now, it also allows you to wire in a neutral safety switch right into your start circuit. Now, the other end of the harness, one piece plugs right into the computer, and you've got a handful of other connections to make for throttle position sensor, RPM input, a couple of power and ground hookups, along with a couple of other connections. And with the Aluminator transmission control system, you can even set your truck up to have 2 separate transmission files or calibrations. Say you want to set it up to have normal, everyday street driving characteristics, and you want to be able to flip a switch and go to a more aggressive shift pattern to match your more aggressive driving, well, you can do that. Or say you got a street strip vehicle that's maybe spraying nitrous, and you want to be able to load a more aggressive or race type transmission calibration when you activate the nitrous, well, you can set it up for that as well. Or you can do like we're going to do, keep it really simple and run a single tune. But there are a couple of changes we need to make to the software before we load it up. Now, the Aluminator software comes preloaded with a few different calibrations. We've chosen a 4-valve Cobra file because it'll pretty closely match what we want out of our Ranger. The problem is the Cobra has about a 500 RPM red line advantage over our Marauder engine. So we're just going to go in here, lower the shift points across the board so they're just underneath our 6,100 RPM red line. Save our progress, we can upload this file into our computer. And it's so easy, even I can do it. All right, once we get this wiring harness installed, power and ground hooked up, and everything plugged in and connected to the computer, we can upload the file from the laptop. We should be up and running. Now, installation is really straightforward, with the harness utilizing factory-style connectors plugging right into the forward sensors on the transmission. Now, it would be nice if we could remove the transmission portion from the rest of the wiring harness, but we've got things like the O2 sensor hookups that are tied into it. I guess we could cut the loom open and separate the wires we need from the ones we don't. But it's just not worth the hassle. Like we've told you plenty of times before, this automatic transmission's going away when we go to stage 2. So what we're gonna do is bundle up and tie off the connectors we're not using. We can finish installing the standalone harness. We'll be in good shape.
Up next, it's go time for Project Rolling Thunder. And later, it's bigger caliber go fast goodies for Rolling Thunder. Stay tuned.
We are back with Corky Coker and his vintage Pierce motorcycle. Corky, this thing is sweet.
Thank you, Court. Let me tell you, I love vintage motorcycles, and this bike is probably one of the coolest, rarest of the breed. This is a 1911 Pierce Air motorcycle, made in New York. As you can see, it's shaft drive, comes up to a 2-speed transmission, 4-cylinder inline, 700 cc's. Really a cool motor, let me tell you. This bike is original paint, original leather. The top tube is the gas tank, and the front down tube is the oil tank. And you know what's even cooler about this bike? It's on G&J motorcycle tires, available exclusively at Coker Tire.
Now, most people know Coker for the vintage cars and classics, muscle cars, but motorcycle tires too.
Motorcycle tires too. Let me tell you, we do 100 sizes in vintage motorcycle. Anything vintage motorcycle, we even do vintage military tires.
Hey, welcome back to Trucks. Well, Project Rolling Thunder is all bolted back together and up and running. We're ready to put some test miles on this thing.
From the first moment we hit the road, Rolling Thunder sounded and felt really strong. And as fun as it was driving the ultimate sleeper, the stock suspension kind of started to show us some problems that we already knew we had. But horsepower wasn't one of them, unlike when we first got the truck. Now there's all this truck can handle, and then some.
And after putting a few miles on the truck, we noticed a less than healthy noise coming from under the hood.
Yeah, that rattle, you can hear it more at very light throttle, almost just off idle, than you can under load.
Heard it then.
Yeah. I think our screaming deal engine wasn't so much of a screaming deal.
Yeah. Now, we knew we had a slightly wounded engine, but it was really tough to resist the temptation of our newfound 300 horsepower. And just cruising around, we didn't have any engine noise whatsoever. And the gauges looked great. Heck, even our stock 4-cylinder radiator kept our V8 nice and cool all day long, never getting above 200 degrees with the help of the electric fan.
But the engine noise was still there, and we knew we were pushing our luck. So we reluctantly headed back to the shop. Yeah. Wow, that is definitely what we're hearing inside the cab. And if I was a betting man, I'd say that's a connecting rod getting ready to let go. But you know, that's okay, because we got a screaming deal on this engine. The guy that sold it to us was a salvage yard, and he even said it was from a theft recovery vehicle. So even if we did have to spend the coin to rebuild this, we'd still be all right in it. But you know, the real reason to stick this engine in here was to make sure that it fit and get this truck ready for the next step.
Yeah, and with that accomplished and the engine a little bit injured, well, I guess we have no choice but to move right into stage 2, which we've been anxious to do anyway, so no big deal. Now, we definitely got some drivetrain upgrades we're going to make, along with some unique suspension modifications that are a little bit outside of the box. Now, as far as the original Marauder engine's concerned, well, we'll yank it out, set it off in the corner, and let it collect dust, or maybe ship it off to Horsepower, see what they can do with it. Either way, we've got some serious hardware to replace that thing. And at least we got to put a few miles on this truck. Let's get it inside.
Man, it looks good under there, doesn't it?
Yeah, I hope the new one fits too.
Up next, like Ryan said, we've got serious hardware. And later, we're giving this classic 37 Ford its vintage look back. Stick around.
That lend a fantastic look.
Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Well, since the beginning of this project, we've been chomping at the bit to get right to stage 2. And, well, there's no better time than right now.
But before we started tearing this truck apart, again, we wanted to throw it on the scales and see what our weight bias was, front to rear, as well as how much weight we've actually added by swapping to a V8.
And it looks like we've got some pretty good news as far as overall weight and weight bias is concerned, especially considering that our V8 and automatic combination weighed 200 pounds more than the anemic 4-cylinder 5-speed combo that came in our little Mazda Ranger. Now, originally, our truck weighed in at 3,090 pounds, but the scales show us we're now weighing in at 3,125, meaning we only picked up 35 pounds overall. And even better yet, well, our weight bias is still at 62%. And that tells us all the effort we put into setting the engine back as far as possible, doing a slight relief to the firewall, and all the other little things we did to either remove weight altogether or locate that weight farther to the back of the truck has paid off. And it's got us on the right track to getting closer to that ideal 50-50 weight split front to rear for stage 2 of this build.
Now, you heard Ryan right. We've switched to a V8, a 200-pound heavier V8, but our vehicle weight is still almost the same. Where'd that 165 pounds go? Check this out. The rubber mat, liners, exhaust system, the condenser, the AC system, all of this stuff seriously contributes to a lot of weight loss. And we haven't even gotten serious about weight reduction yet. But there's another great way that we can reduce weight and increase efficiency, and that is by switching from an automatic transmission to a manual.
Yeah, because with the convenience of an automatic comes a weight penalty. Not to mention, they're just not as efficient at transferring power as a manual gearbox. That's why we're going with this Tremec Magnum T56. Now, this is a new 6-speed transmission from Tremec, and there's lots of cool stuff to talk about, but we'll get to the details later. For now, I will tell you, this thing will handle 700 foot-pounds of torque, which makes it a perfect match for our engine. Now, to connect it to the engine, we're using this lightweight steel SFI certified bell housing from QuickTime. Now, due to its compact design, it maximizes header and transmission tunnel clearance. Now, a lot of guys just reach for an aluminum bell housing, but we're going to be making a lot of power. And we're not going to be easy on the truck. So to play it safe, we went this route. Speaking of lots of power, check this out. Now, just like our Marauder engine, this bad boy is a 4.6-liter dual overhead cam V8 out of the Ford racing catalog. You guys might know it better as the Aluminator. Now, it's based off of the legendary and nearly bulletproof 03 and 04 Mustang Cobra Terminator engines that were capable of producing and withstanding gobs and gobs of power. Now, one of the things that makes this one different and where it got its name is this one has an aluminum block, saving us some weight. Now, the Aluminator comes in 2 different versions, a high and low compression, either 10-to-1 or 8.5-to-1. We went with the low compression because we're going to be running forced induction and lots of it. Now, one of the best parts about this engine, it's got brand new rod bearings.
Now, you Cobra guys know that the stock Terminators came with the Eaton M112 root-style supercharger. Not a bad piece of gear, but this is an awesome upgrade. This is the Whipple Ford Racing 2.3 root-style supercharger. Now, just bolting this on a stock Terminator is going to get you an additional 85 horsepower at the wheels. Now, one of the cool things about the Whipple is that the front pulley is interchangeable. With this 3.5-inch pulley, it's going to get us somewhere around 13 pounds of boost. But the good thing is, if you want to make more boost, it's as simple as reducing the pulley size. Now, this combination on Von Gitten's drift car netted him about 680 horsepower and 600 foot-pounds of torque at the rear wheels. Now, do we need that with a 3,000-pound Ford Ranger? I don't think so, but it's sure fun to know that we can get there pretty easy. Hey, welcome back to Trucks. Well, check this classic out. This truck is on loan to us from the folks at Coker Tire. And if it looks a little bit familiar to you, well, maybe this much of the roof and the windshield. If you remember, a couple seasons ago, our Project HRT, our 37 Ford street rod truck, well, the molds for the fiberglass were actually pulled off of one of these, an actual 1937 Ford truck. Now, this truck is kind of an interesting mix of the options that were given to the standard and deluxe cabs. And it's obviously been gone through once, and it's showing its age in a couple of different places.
Now, all 37 Fords came with the cool flathead V8, but there were two different versions. A tiny little 2.2-liter, 136 cubic inch version putting out 60 horsepower, and the more commonly optioned 221 cubic inch or 3.6-liter V8 putting out 85 horsepower. Now, this is a later version of the 221 with the 24 studs holding down the Offenhauser cylinder head. In addition to the upgraded head, it's also got a cast Fenton manifold and a 12-volt conversion, making for a nice, reliable driver.
Now, as cool as this old truck is, the paint is not the only thing showing its age. Check out these old bias-ply tires. There's tons of tread, but look at the cracks in the sidewall. And just in case the camera doesn't show it up enough, look at this. Now, on top of being dry-rotted, old, and cracked, these are bias-ply tires, which haven't been standard issue on passenger cars and trucks since the early 70s. So, safe to say it's time for an upgrade, because these are probably not the safest things that you could have on a vehicle.
Now, older bias-ply tires, like the ones found on this truck, are constructed by laying out the plies at a 45-degree angle from the center line of the tire. That resulted in a stiff sidewall, increased rolling resistance, and a harsher ride. For the next evolution in tires, manufacturers added fiberglass reinforced belts to the bias-ply tires. These became popular in the late 60s on muscle cars due to their wider footprint.
Now, the Coker radial tires that we're upgrading to look just like original replacements, but they utilize a far superior modern design and construction.
A radial tire simply means that the overlapping plies are laid at a 90-degree angle from the center line of the tire, followed by steel belts. This produces a more flexible tire that handles better and offers less rolling resistance.
So along with the better construction of a radial, you also get the cool vintage look with the wide whites. And by the way, the white wall tires and red lines that Coker manufactures, well, it's not just an afterthought. The white walls and red lines are actually a part of the construction of the tire, so there are no safety issues there.
Now, we've heard horror stories about how some people try to achieve the look of a white wall. Evidently, some people try to grind out the sidewall and glue in a white wall after the fact. Or even taking a white raised leather tire and grinding down through the black layer on top to get to the white layer of rubber underneath, then polishing it to make it look good. Either method will compromise the safety of the tire.
So thanks to Coker Tire, you've got safe and affordable options that lend a fantastic look to any classic vehicle, and an upgrade that is going to ensure that a truck like this spends a lot more time exactly where it belongs. That's Out on the Road, starting now.
If you can't find them, grind them. There's the rock crusher, the top loader, and the 3 on the tree. But today on Musclecar, it's everything you need to know about the classic 4 on the floor.
Don't sweat. Today on Musclecar, Rick and Tommy know their 4 speeds, and after this show, you will too. We'll show you how to identify, choose, and rebuild one. Plus, a 71 Torino Cobra sinks its teeth into some pavement.
Hey, welcome to Musclecar. Today's show is all about, you guessed it, the 4-speed. Back when muscle cars ruled the streets, if you didn't have a third pedal, you were either a grandma or you had a pocket protector. If you wanted the most respect, you had 4 gears instead of 3.
Now, Mopar, Ford, and Chevy all had primary builders for their 4-speeds, and other than a few design differences, they all pretty much operate the same. And even the modern 5 and 6 speeds, they all can trace their roots right back to the good old 4-speed. Now, one other thing that all these 4-speeds have in common, they're a kick in the butt to drive. And if you're restoring an old muscle car, odds are you're going to end up with one of these. But what's the difference between them, and how do you know which one is right for you?
If you're working with a Mopar, you've got one stock option, the A833. It came in different configurations with different input shafts and tail housings depending on engine and body style. The earlier models can be identified by the cast iron case. They're a good overall performer, and rebuilt units can be found for under $1,000.
Now, Ford offered up several options. The T10 top loader is easy to identify because, as the name implies, everything loads in through the top. Now, this makes the case a whole lot stronger. Now, it was designed to replace the Borg-Warner. Now, this transmission came in two basic styles, either a wide ratio or a close. Now, a lot of guys think that this refers to the actual throw on the shifter, but it doesn't. What it actually refers to is the gear ratio changes between the gears. Now, say you're driving a wide ratio 4-speed. You can rack it up to about $6,000, grab second gear, but your RPMs are going to drop all the way down to, say, 2,800 to 3,000. That puts your engine below its peak horsepower. Then it has to work to get back up. If you're driving a close ratio, you rack it up to $6,000, grab second gear, it may only drop down to $4,000. That means that your engine is still in its peak horsepower. It creates out to a whole lot quicker quarter-mile times.
As for General Motors, you had several makes to choose from. Their Borg-Warner was the same as Ford's T10 that Rick was just talking about, but with a different bolt pattern for the bell housing. You could also get a Saginaw or one of several Muncies. You can always tell a Borg-Warner by the 9 bolts in the side cover, where a Saginaw and a Muncie will only have 7, and the Muncie will always have an aluminum case. So how do you know which one of these is right for you? If you're not doing a numbers matching restoration, let your wallet and how much horsepower you're dealing with decide for you. Choose a heavy-duty model for your higher horse applications. Otherwise, a cheaper light-duty will be just as fun to drive. You can pay a little more for a close ratio, but a wide ratio will still give you the feel of a good old 4-speed.
If you are doing a numbers matching restoration, then be sure you do your research before you lay down any coin. Now, the best way to find out if your transmission is correct is by simply tracking down the OEM part numbers. Now, Muncie's in particular can be ID'd by the casting numbers in the side case, the tail shaft housing, and the main case. Now, also don't forget to look for the date stamp and count the number of splines on your input and your output shafts, and count the number of rings on the input shaft. Now, all of these things need to match up for you to have a 100% numbers matching transmission.
The name Muncie almost always is going to come up when you're talking about 4-speeds. That's because it was GM's premier performance transmission back in the 60s and 70s. It came in 3 main types: the M20 wide ratio, the M21 close ratio, and the legendary M22 rock crusher. This extra heavy-duty close ratio chunk of metal is the most desired and the hardest to find of the Muncies. Most transmissions have helical gears, which mean they're cut in a spiral shape that reduces noise. The rock crusher can be easily identified by its straight cut gears, which generate the signature whine.
It doesn't matter if you have a rock crusher, a top loader, a Borg-Warner, or a Saginaw. The rebuild process on all of them is very similar. So after the break, we'll be knocking one apart to show you how it's done.
Hey, welcome back. If you're buying a 4-speed from a swap meet, it's a great idea to remove the side cover for inspection. I've opened up our M21 to show you what to look for. If the gears are worn or chipped or the synchros are shot, they'll have to be replaced. So just be aware of what you're buying. Some will have a magnet on the inside to collect metal shavings. If it does, check it out to see if it has any large pieces. Ours has some shavings stuck to it, which could indicate a bad bearing or a lot of miles, so it's going to get a rebuild. I'm starting by removing the front bearing retainer. The main shaft has to be shifted into 2nd and 4th to lock it in place for the removal of the input retaining nut. The roll pin needs to be removed from the housing so the selector shaft can be pried out of the way. Next to come off is the tail housing. Use a puller to remove the speedo drive gear, then pull off the reverse main gear. Engage 4th before removing the main shaft assembly from the case. Tap the input shaft loose with a soft hammer, then take out the reverse idler and tap out the input bearing.
Tommy, looks like you got the guts knocked out of this thing.
Yeah, pretty much. All I got to do is press out this counter shaft right now. You don't want to help, do you?
No, I can give you a hand.
Get a hold of that greasy dude.
Yeah, I just want to get me dirty too, huh?
This could be done with a hammer, but as usual, the press makes it a whole lot easier.
Here's your dirty transmission back. You know we got a parts washer over there, right?
Here, let me let you clean that up.
All right.
Now I can unload the main shaft, remove all the retaining clips, gears, and synchros that can be slid off. Next, press the main shaft out of the third gear assembly. The rear main shaft support bearing is held in place with a snap ring. Just spread the ring and tap the bearing loose. Rick got everything cleaned up nice and pretty for me so I can start putting this thing back together. Summit sent us this rebuild kit that comes with all the gaskets, needle bearings, clips, bearings, seals, and synchros so we can get it back to that like new condition. I hope you were paying attention earlier because now you can assemble it by reversing the process I just showed you. But in case you're just tuning in, I'll go over it step by step. Install the new snap ring and bearing into the rear main shaft retainer. During reassembly, make sure to use plenty of heavy grease to prevent damage on your first ride out of the shop. Drop on third gear and the new synchro ring, then tap the synchro hub onto its spline. The fourth gear sleeve must be pressed back into place. Next, slide on second gear in the synchro and tap the hub into place. A snap ring holds everything in place. The synchro hubs each have 3 notches for the clutch keys. Use some grease to hold them in place during assembly. With the clutch keys installed, the selector sleeves can slide over the synchro hubs. Fourth gear is last on the stack, and the retaining plate falls into place with another snap ring, keeping it all together. The input shaft bearing assembly is put together piece by piece, one roller bearing at a time, then slides inside the shaft. Next comes the counter shaft assembly. After inserting the spacer, the needle bearings go in. There's a bunch of little bitty pieces here, so take your time and do it right. Use grease to hold them in place and make sure you don't leave any out or bad things will happen. With those out of the way, I can get to filling the case up, starting with the gear set, thrust washer, and counter shaft. The reverse gear rolls into place and a new thrust washer slides in. Tap the new input support bearing into the case, then slide in the input shaft. Now comes the big chunk, better known as the main gear assembly. The reverse gear shaft falls into place, followed by the reverse selector gear and speedo drive gear. The tail housing is held into place by 6 bolts that need to be torqued to specs. The reverse gear selector can slide back into its spot, and a new roll pin will keep it there. Don't forget the output shaft seal and the speedo assembly, which both go on pretty easy. Some Loctite will keep the input nut from loosening up, and don't forget to engage second and fourth before tightening it down. Last but not least, the side cover can be torqued down. Rebuilding a 4-speed from a different manufacturer will be pretty similar, but if you get into a more modern 5 and 6-speed, you're gonna need some specialty tools. So do your homework before cracking one open. That looks good.
Up next, there's a whole lot of shaking going on in this Ramjet Torino Cobra. Today's flashback, a 1971 Ford Torino Cobra.
The 70s may have beaten the tar out of the Musclecar, but the 71 Torino Cobra still had plenty of venom left to make its bite deadly. Watch out, because this snake is coiled up and ready to strike.
As part of Ford's mid-size line, the Torino served double duty as both a sensible family car and a radical street machine. It started off as the sporty member of the Fairlane line in '68, but by '71 the Torino had taken over and the Fairlane was given the boot. The name comes from Italy's version of Detroit, which suits the car well. Great styling matched with raw American power under the hood.
The real muscle was in the Cobra, first unleashed in '69. Came standard with a 285 horse 351, or you could pick your poison. There was the 429 Cobra Jet banging out 370 horsepower.
But to really shake things up, you could order the Super Cobra Jet with a ram air scoop and shaker hood. Capable of 375 horsepower, it ran through the quarter mile in 14.5 seconds at 102 miles an hour. Not bad for a 2-ton beast.
Like any snake, you can tell if it's dangerous by its markings. The warning signs were the blacked out hood and tail panel, not to mention a ton of badges all around. Plus it had a unique grille that wasn't split in the middle, like all the other Torinos.
Standard features also included heavy-duty suspension, dual exhaust, and a set of wide ovals with 7-inch wheels. A base model Cobra would cost you about $3,300, but this one is tricked out with lots of extras that ran the ticket up to almost $5 grand.
Extras like the unusual ribbon tag, which was cool but kinda hard to read. It's also optioned with high back bucket seats, an automatic C6 transmission, mag wheels, and reflective laser stripes down both sides. A 9-inch traction lock diff with 391 gears helps shed some snake skin.
The Cobra was one of the Blue Oval's last attempt at big cars with big muscle, tipping the scales at 3,800 pounds and measuring 206 inches in length. The Cobra, well, it's really more of an anaconda. The styling for '71 was pretty much the same as the '70 and featured the fastback sports roof that didn't come on the base models.
Only about 3,000 Cobras were sold in '71, making this one rare car. Throw in options like the Ram Air 429 and red-on-red look, and this is one of only a handful ever built.
It was also the last year for the second-gen Torino and the Cobra option. In '72, a brand new look was on its way, and power, it went out the window.
So if you see this Cobra slithering down the road, think twice before going near it. It ain't no garden snake.
Coming up, how modern gearboxes have improved the classic 4-speed design.
Hey guys, welcome back. We've been talking a lot about 4-speeds today. You can have the best gearbox in the world, but it's not going to do you a bit of good if you can't control it. That's where a shifter comes in. It's basically a lever that pushes on the rods to control the gears. But there's more to it than that. A performance shifter is going to have a shorter throw, a more precise pattern, and that's going to equate out to quicker shifts and less jamming. Now, upgrading was a must to be competitive, and her shifters like this have found their way into a lot of muscle cars for that very reason. Now, all standard transmissions have some kind of linkage to control the gears. Now, some are external, like our Muncie, but others, like our late model T56 6-speed, well, it's all internal. Now, the main reason for going to an internal design is size. 2 more gears means an extra rod and a bigger shifter, and there's just flat not enough room for all this hanging off the side. So they took the shifter, moved it to the top, ran all the linkage internally. A stronger input shaft is another feature on later model transmissions. They use higher quality materials and a higher spline count. Now, the larger splines on the 4-speed may look stronger, but they're not. The higher spline count means more contact area, which means it can handle a lot more torque. But hey, let's be honest, the biggest advantage of swapping out a 4-speed to a 5 or a 6-speed is the overdrive. I mean, the best you can hope for with a 4-speed is a final drive ratio of maybe 1:1, whereas with a 6-speed, you can get a double overdrive, and that means less engine wear and better gas mileage. Plus, you can run a set of 456s out back if you're going to build a Boulevard Bruiser and still cruise down the freeway at 70 miles an hour, no problem. Hey, that's the best of both worlds.
All you automatic guys may be feeling a little left out, but if you want to join in the 3-pedal fun, there's a lot of companies out there offering conversion kits.
And that means you can drop in a 4, 5, or 6-speed into just about any muscle car. But all you slush box fans out there, don't sweat it, because we'll be getting a lot more in depth into autos later on. But for this week, we're out of time. So until next time, we're out of here.
Thanks, Rick and Tommy, and thanks to Corky Coker for coming in again. It's always so much fun to have you.
I loved it, Courtney. You know, and don't forget, if you need collector tires and wheels for vintage cars, antique motorcycles, trucks, you got it at Coker Tire Company. We got you covered, and you got my word on it.
Nice, we're gonna remember that. Well, he is the man to see, and we're gonna have a link to Coker Tire on our blog. And while you're there, check out the new SEMA issue of PowerBlock the magazine. It's online and it's free. You can't beat that. I'm Courtney Hansen. We'll see you next weekend.